Hey, what's up? It's Chris from chrisbeatcancer.com on the Cancer Survivor Couch at Annie Appleseed Conference. And I have a special guest, cancer survivor, Melyssa Lawson. And Melyssa just gave her testimony at the conference, and it was so good that I had to convince her and her husband, who's supervising, he's producing in the corner, to share her story with you, with my audience on YouTube, and hopefully it will encourage you and inspire you, because it certainly did me. So take me back 5 years ago. What was going on?
Well, I had just had my second child, and my oldest was 4 years old. The youngest had just turned about 2 months old, and I just was not recovering from that pregnancy. I mean, I was just exhausted.
Feeling bad.
Yeah, exhausted. And, you know, more so than just the classic, like, oh, I'm a mom of 2 boys. I was exhausted. So I started, you know, seeking. I went to the doctor, and I asked him, I said, you know, gosh, I'm just exhausted. I can barely take care of my 2 kids. What's going on? And he's like, oh, you know, it's just having 2 kids is exhausting, and sent me home. And literally, that was the pattern. I went to probably like 5 doctors, and they told me the same thing. They were just like, oh, you know, being a mom's tiring, you know, chasing after the kids all day. And I was like, no, there is something wrong with me. I started probably in the spring. I was diagnosed in 2009. And in the spring of 2010, I started getting physically sick. And I'm like, that's not normal. That's not...
What were the symptoms? Like, what...
I was, in addition to being tired...
Were you getting sick easily, like colds and flu and fevers and stuff?
Yeah, I really was. In addition to being tired, I was getting colds all the time. I had about 2 cases of strep throat, and that just wasn't normal. I was like, that just is not normal.
This is good. Something to mention too is, if you get sick a lot, or if you know people that get sick a lot, typically they have immune suppression, or their immune system is overloaded. And when your immune system is overloaded, you're in a very vulnerable position, because if your immune system can't keep up with the demand, then cancer cells could rapidly reproduce in your body. So eventually, you ended up finding a doctor who did a scan? What did he do?
I did. Well, I went to another local doctor, and I told him, I said, there is some, you know, I went in and I actually thought I had a bladder infection, and I was getting off the table, and he said, whoa, stop, does your neck hurt? And I said, no, it's, you know, I thought my bladder was the problem. And he said that he could visibly see, you know, several lumps on the side of my neck, and, you know, and
you hadn't seen them? You hadn't noticed them?
I had not. So that is like rule number 1, I think, for anyone who, you know, is questioning health. Pay attention to your body, because clearly, I mean, this was going on, and I was really oblivious to it. I was thinking, oh, bladder infection, strep throat, you know, and I just was not.
Well, you know, when you got 2 kids, you're busy. You probably didn't even put makeup on, didn't look in the mirror, right? It's just like,
so
ain't got time for that.
Yeah, it's not like I'm standing in the mirror like, ooh, what are the dimensions of my neck? And so anyway, he's, you know, palpitated, said definitely feeling some lumps, sent me for a biopsy. We first did an ultrasound, and of course that just like lit up the room, and I didn't know that, you know, back then increased blood flow equals cancer. And so did the ultrasound, went to the biopsy, and got a call while I was on a girls' weekend, standing in the middle of a 7-Eleven saying, you have cancer. You know, and that was a crappy way to find out that I had cancer.
Yeah, no, right. You said this in your, you know, I know your story obviously because you just told it, but, you know, I got the same call early in the morning, you know, after a biopsy, you have cancer. And you're just like,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, the whole room was like spinning, and I'm just standing in the middle of 7-Eleven, and my whole world changed, but, you know, obviously everybody else is still living around me, like, you know, they could care less, and so I had to, you know...
Did you tell your friends that you're on the trip with?
I did. Yeah. I sort of, like, abruptly ran out of the 7-Eleven, and she was like, well, you didn't even buy what you came in for, and I was like, well, I have cancer, so it doesn't matter.
So I hate to bum out the trip, guys.
Yeah.
Girls, but I have cancer.
And it was. That whole weekend, I really was like the true definition of a Debbie Downer that whole weekend.
And by the way, you were 26.
I was.
I was 26.
I was. Wow.
When I was,
okay.
No, was I? Was I 24 or 26?
Just say you're
Wait a
26.
minute. Yeah, I was 26. Yes. Sometimes I get my own story mixed up.
Older and wiser.
But young adult cancers are on the rise.
They are.
They're on the rise. And of course, for me, that was 10 years ago. For you, it was 5 years ago. But this is really, really snowballing. Young adult cancers, even childhood cancers. And this is because of the environment we live in, and the diet we're eating, and even our stress level. All of that is contributing to sick, unhealthy people. And hey, a mom of 2 kids has a lot of stress. I mean, that's, part of it. So, okay, so then what? So then you get this diagnosis on the phone.
Yeah.
And you come back after the trip, and what happens?
Well, basically, I got the call on a Saturday, and by that Monday, they had already scheduled surgery, preliminary radiation/chemo, depending on, like the stage and severity of it. And I drove myself down. I was meeting my girlfriends down there. And so I had to drive myself back up. And I had about a good, 3-hour drive to think about everything. And on the way up, I thought, I am just not going to do this. There is no way. It was like bam, bam, bam.
So you knew they had you scheduled for all this stuff before you even got home. They just said, they said, here's what you're going to do next.
Yeah, it's almost like they had literally, they called me with the news. And I think they had to have, before they even gave me the news, have already planned my destiny. They scheduled me for this, that, and the other. And I thought, that's so unfair. They don't know me. They didn't ask, is this what you want to do or anything. So I basically decided on my drive home, I was like, I'm not going to have surgery. I'm not going to have radiation. I don't take lightly to having major organs, removed from your body. So
why did you decide that, though? I mean, why did you make that decision?
That's a really good question, and I think sitting here, a really, really good question.
Sometimes I have good questions.
I really have to think about this.
People want to know.
They do, and I think it was. It wasn't out of fear, because I was just being bombarded. And I think for me, when someone bombards me with something, I kind of get the whoa, kind of back off. I have to think about stuff. I don't do anything major without really thinking it through. And I felt like from Saturday to Monday, that wasn't enough time to think things through.
Are you a pretty analytical person?
I am. And
so that was kind of maybe part of it, is you're like, I need to understand this.
Yeah.
I need to process, everybody hang on.
Most definitely, yeah. Because I wasn't, I know doctors, yes, they are experts in certain areas, but I just couldn't see myself laying all this in a doctor's hands and just trusting, oh, he signed me up for surgery and this is what I really need. Yeah. I just wasn't trusting that at the time.
And this is the way doctors operate for almost all cases with cancer, is they create a sense of urgency, and they want to rush you into surgery, chemo, radiation as fast as possible before you have time to even think about what's happening.
Yeah.
Think about your life. Think about why you have cancer, because it's important to figure that out. And also, of course, they don't really give you any other options either. And most people are so afraid that they're just like, okay, whatever you say.
Yeah, because they do. They really presented it to me as well, you're going to die if you don't do this. Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, from Saturday to Monday, surely I won't die. And, clearly I had this cancer for quite some time for me to have had that many tumors and, all the other symptoms and stuff that I was exhibiting. So I'm like, well, gosh, I have at least, a couple weeks. Yeah, I'm not going to die.
See, this is so wonderful. This is such a great point and great thing to think about, because what you did was you thought about it rationally and logically, and you didn't fall into the urgency trap.
Right.
And but what happens is, when you're afraid, people make very irrational and illogical decisions, because fear raises your stress hormones, cortisol, and cortisol literally switches off parts of your brain that think rationally.
Exactly.
That's why people who are angry or afraid or upset do things that make no sense, right? They make bad decisions.
Exactly.
And so this is just such a great reminder to, if you get a cancer diagnosis, to just step back, calm down, think about your situation, think about what people are telling you, and really think about what you want to do. And so back to your story, or what you don't want to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the first thing, right, is that you knew you didn't want to do surgery. I mean, what, surgery and chemo?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I decided against that. And it really, like you said, you know, touching back on that, it is so hard to make that decision, you know, to really step back and make that decision, because basically, I mean, like what society has dictated, it's like cancer equals death.
Yeah.
And if you don't do something like ASAP, like you could die next week. And
most people die anyway of cancer, even though they do all those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have much support during that time?
No, I really didn't. I mean, up until the point of diagnosis and, you know, going through the biopsies and everything like that, I really didn't. I was the person, you know, I brought myself to the hospital, I brought myself to the doctor's appointments, and, you know, I didn't. I was pretty much on my own on that.
You made a joke about if you had gone the conventional route.
Yes, I always say, you know, and you know, hindsight 2020, but I always say, I'm like, gosh, you know, everybody who always does like conventional things, you know, people bring them food, they, you know, drive them to the doctors and do all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, you know, as soon as I announced that I was doing natural, you know, remedies, everybody's like, sure, we're not gonna say, yeah, you know, they didn't understand it. They're like, oh, well, I'm not helping you.
Yeah, so. Yeah, that's, it's funny, but it's kind of sucks at the time.
It's funny on the other side of it, but yeah, exactly, it does.
And that's something you have to be prepared for. If you're considering using nutrition and natural therapies and radically changing your life to heal, you have to be prepared, number one, for opposition, and two, for like lack of support. And you know, it's not because people don't love you and care about you, it's because they really don't understand what you're doing, and they really deep down think you're doing the wrong thing. And so it just causes sort of a rift. And somebody I interviewed in one of the other videos from this conference, this is a woman, she didn't even tell her mother she had cancer. Didn't even tell her mom or her family, because she knew they would interfere and meddle with her plan to heal. And she did heal, and she's alive 40 years later. I'll put a link to that video in this one. Wow. But yeah, 40 years.
Wow, yeah.
But so it's just kind of funny that she didn't tell anybody. She was just like, let me just take care of this, and changed her life. Okay, so what did you do?
Well, I started out, from the moment I decided I wasn't going to do surgery, I decided I'm just going to go home. I cleaned out my cabinet, and I met with a natural doctor.
What was in your cabinet?
Everything that grosses me out today. Stuff like
Cheetos.
Yes, sadly, I hate to admit that. I mean,
all the junk food.
Yes,
because you were a normal person.
Exactly, like I was an American who ate, you know, everything that was on the shelves at the grocery store, which I thought was healthy.
Yeah, whatever you had coupons for.
Exactly, exactly. So I took a black trash bag. Cleared everything.
What was the first book you read, or what was the first? I mean, because you know, there's a jump between I don't want to do chemo, that's instinct, right? To like, what am I going to do? And so, what was the first thing that you found, or information that you found, that inspired you to do that?
I actually...
Had you been into this stuff for a while?
I had not. And which, you know, strangely enough, I guess sitting here, you know, saying I did natural remedies to cure my cancer, before I was diagnosed with cancer, I swore, and this was years before I knew I ever had cancer, was going to get cancer, I told people, I said, gosh, one day if I ever get cancer, I'm just going to have it cut out, I'm going to have myself chemoed on.
Really weird.
I cursed myself because I ended up with cancer, and I didn't read any books in particular. I've told several people that, you know, people say like, oh, well, you know, what book did you follow? What? I hate to read. I hate to read.
You're illiterate.
Yeah. 5th grade reading level.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Were there any websites at the time?
I didn't. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, so what in the world? How did you figure this out? I know, I'm fascinated.
I was actually, my dad gave me the number to a natural doctor, and I thought, well, this is a good place to start.
Yep.
So I called up the natural doctor, and I went to see her, and we sat down and, you know, kind of talked about, you know, what I was, like, symptoms, you know, diagnosis, what I was going through. And she said, well, you know, in addition to some supplements, you know, like high doses of like vitamin C and, you know, things like that, vitamin E, she said, go yeast free. And of course, me not having any knowledge, I thought, oh, I just don't eat bread? And she said, no, it's a lot more than that. And it was basically no dairy, no, carbs, sugars, anything like that. And
no simple sugar. And this is also called the anti-candida diet,
exactly.
right?
Yeast
thing.
And candida, yeah.
Yep.
Same exact thing. Absolutely.
And so that involves, and it's different than what I did. We both did a radical diet change.
Yeah.
I obviously cut out all processed sugar, but I still ate some fruit. But you cut out pretty much all fruit, right? Or all the sweet fruits?
A majority. Because I was told, and of course, like before that, I thought, well, any fruit or vegetable is fantastic for you. And come to find out, bananas, grapes, anything that can ferment, vinegars were a no-no. And that they would kind of, aid in the candida overgrowth. So I cut all those out.
So the people that know me, know my story, know I had vinegar in my diet. I had bananas in my diet. I mean, about one banana a day. And I had some berries and stuff every day. But the results are very important because different things work for different people. And what we have in common is we adopted a hardcore nutritional approach, but there were some important differences. And so was mine better? It worked for me. Was hers better? It worked for her. So it's good to know that if you follow one dietary strategy and you're not getting the results you want, that you need to modify it in some way.
Yeah,
Same
absolutely.
thing they do in the medical industry. If chemo doesn't work, one chemo doesn't work, they give you another one, right? And so anyone out there watching, if you are on a nutritional protocol and you're not getting the results you want, don't be discouraged. Don't keep doing it if it isn't working. You need to make a change, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were on the anti-candida diet,
Right.
which was, so take me through a day of typically what you ate in a day.
A day in the life of.
Yes.
I would, and I don't think I mentioned that I did away with dairy, like no yogurts, cheeses, milk, nothing of that nature. I got back to like the hardcore basics. Like I would just keep, raw ingredients around the house. I would make my own granola for breakfast. Just a lot of like fruits and vegetables.
Salads?
Yeah, salads.
You did some juices?
I did. I didn't start incorporating juices probably until about I would say like 9 months after the diagnosis, because I was still trying to feel my way around because I didn't have a lot of resources. In fact, I had no resources.
You know what? We didn't actually talk about what your diagnosis was, I don't think. So what was it?
I had papillary thyroid cancer and lymph node spread.
So it was stage 3, basically?
Pretty, I guess you would call it that. That's
Yeah.
what pretty much.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, we talked about the diet, a little bit of juicing. We do like low sugar juices, mostly vegetable juices.
I was. I started when I got into juicing. I hit that pretty hardcore. I would do that sometimes like 3-4 times a day to really.
What was in it?
I did a lot of carrots to begin with.
Yep,
I do
me too.
Tons of carrots. Carrots, apples.
Celery, beets.
Yeah. Love some beets.
Good, good. Yes.
I would do those. I would do in the summertime because I would grow fruits and vegetables. So I would use watermelon as a base for a lot of my juices.
Yum. That's good.
Yeah, loved it. And I would end up, I grew wheatgrass. I started, incorporating wheatgrass. So I kind of turned my kitchen into a mini farm. And
Been there. Yes.
And it always smells nice and earthy in my house.
Yeah.
So I would. I do juicing wheatgrass. I did Chinese herbs for a period of time. And
what you had very, very high thyroid hormone levels, didn't you?
I did, very high.
So the first test, tell me about your interactions with the endocrinologist.
Yeah, absolutely. I had natural doctors and then, what I call doctors. And I would go to my endocrinologist, and my first blood draw, before diagnosis, my TSH was 48.64, which is, anyone who is even just doesn't have thyroid cancer and has a thyroid issue knows that is astronomical.
It's crazy high, and the
yeah.
normal range is, on the high side of normal is like 9?
It's actually even lower than that.
6?
Like a legit normal is like 4.0.
Wow.
They're calling legit right now.
Okay.
So, but again, and that varies a little depending on what doctor, what chart they read.
Yeah.
But it hovers around 4. So, either way, my levels were like off the chart. And I refused, you know, my endocrinologist would say, well, you need, you know, Synthroid, and would always write me a prescription, and I would just ball it up and throw it away. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm going to use food and get it down. And she said, no, you can't do that. Nobody uses food and controls their thyroid. And, you know, periodically we would do blood
draws. So that was like a challenge to you, right?
Oh, it so was. It so was.
You're like, you can't tell me I can't do this.
It was.
By the way, take a good look. This is the attitude.
Sunglasses and all.
Yes, of a survivor. Really, you have to be a little bit defiant and determined to live. Right? Does
yeah,
that
you
describe
do.
You?
You do, absolutely.
You have to be defiant, especially
absolutely.
when a doctor or someone says, you can't do this, you can't get well, there's only one way. Every survivor, I know, myself included, has had that sort of moment where they're like, no, I don't believe that. You know?
Yeah, you have to, in order to beat it, especially if you're going, you know, the path less traveled. You have to stand up for yourself, number one, and you have to have like that fighter spirit, no matter what. Even like when you hit those bumps, you have to be like, no, I rock. I'm gonna get through this.
Yeah,
you just have to, or else.
I love it.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay. Sorry, I rabbit trailed.
It's okay.
So the first meeting, she said, 48, you gotta take Synthroid. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you're like, no, I'm gonna do my natural thing. I got the diet. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what?
And then
And she said, oh, good. That's a great idea.
I wish she said that. We agreed to disagree, basically.
Okay. Yep.
And, you know, I basically told her, look, you watch my blood, you order my scans, and I know what you think, just keep it to yourself, sort of thing. And so I had periodic, you know, blood work, scans, and my first blood draw, my levels went from 48 to 14.
Yeah. Hello.
I know.
And how long did that take? 3 months? 6 months?
Less than that.
Really?
Because I went, let's see, like I said, the couple days after diagnosis, I threw everything away, started eating clean immediately. And I had a blood draw, my first blood draw, about a month and a half later.
Okay, so like 6 weeks and just huge drop.
Yes.
All right. Maybe that was a fluke.
Yeah, so she says. So my doctor said. She said, oh, sometimes, you know, blood goes up and down, and I wasn't buying it. I don't think anybody's TSH goes up and down that drastically.
So, did you have another test?
We did, yes. I waited a couple more months, so I had that blood draw at the beginning of October. December, I had scans to measure the tumors, and they were shrinking, and my TSH was now 10.1. So
coming down again. You must have been feeling pretty excited. Like
I was.
Were you feeling better, feeling healthier, like feeling good anyway?
I was. Really and truly, I think like the hardest part was like the first month on the diet, because, you know, I was kind of trying to feel my way around it, and you know, like what can I eat, and really, you know, trying to fine tune everything. And after that, I sort of like, you know, hit the ground running. And
did you kind of get into a groove where you pretty much ate the same thing every day?
For a while I did, and then I was like, oh, I gotta get, you know, some variation, and that's when I just sort of, you know, struck out and, you know, experimented with, you know, different combinations of stuff. And
a lot of raw food?
I did,
right?
yeah.
What percentage would you say? 50% raw? 60%?
Yeah, easily.
Or more?
Yeah, easily, because, I mean, you know, so I heard that, you know, the more raw, the better. And, you know, definitely juicing. Like I said, I was juicing a lot. And, yeah, and I was still, even when I got these good results, I was still met with opposition. You know, the doctor would swear like, oh, it's really, you know, you're just the same. That's, you know, blood really isn't an indicator. Yet when I was being diagnosed, it was an indicator, so, you know, go figure. But you know, so how
much more blood work did you have?
Oh gosh, I mean,
so that was, you got it down from 48, then to 14, then to 10,
and then the following, I guess probably about 6 months later, I got it down to 5. And which is, again, still clearly it's
awesome,
plummeting. And
what were the tumors doing?
They were still shrinking.
You
still
had 3,
shrinking.
right?
I did 3, 3 noticeable ones. And, you know, like I said, I like to call them like my McDonald's, like the small, medium, and large. And so
no supersized one. That's
right?
good.
No, the technician never thought that was funny, but, you know, so be it. And so yeah, everything was like blood steadily coming down, tumors shrinking, and I was ecstatic, but nobody else around me was, because they just...
It's pretty typical.
Yeah.
It's pretty typical.
Yeah. Like, nobody was celebrating with me. Everybody was like, oh.
Everyone's very cautious, and they're just like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah,
right?
And just kind of like sweep it under the rug, like, oh,
yeah.
you know, and which was so disappointing for me, because in my mind I wanted like ticker tape and you know, all that kind of stuff.
No party.
No party.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. So, at what point did you hit sort of like no tumors? No, I mean perfect blood work.
It was in 2012. I had 2 boys already.
2 years. 3 years?
It was 9, 10, 11, let's do math real quick. Yeah, 2009 to 2012. And in 2012, because I always knew I wanted another baby, and the doctor said, oh, you'll never be able to carry, you know, another child, and, you know, you'll never be able to naturally control your, you know, TSH levels and everything. And again, that was just a challenge where I was like, yeah, watch me. And in March 2012, my TSH was 4.0, and I was given the green light to go ahead and be able to, you know, have my 3rd baby.
And you did.
And I did.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes. So now I am the proud mother of 3 little boys.
3 boys. And, all under what? All under 6 or 8?
9, 5,
okay.
And 15 months. So
I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old girl, so I know
so
what that's
know,
like.
You know,
yes, I do.
In the same boat.
Although they're girls, so they're probably a little sweeter.
Okay. My house is
less maniacal.
Yeah, my house is crazy.
Okay, so and now we're at the 5-year mark. So basically, after 3 years, you were like perfect health.
Yeah, I was feeling excellent.
And then did you have some scans eventually? And
I did.
What happened there?
I did. Had my 3rd child. Had scans. Everything was still, you know, legit and measuring. And I actually, in 2013, I opted to have my thyroid removed. And, you know, it wasn't from bullying from the doctors. I had my thyroid removed, and I went on a natural thyroid supplement. And, you know, of course because I had cancer, and pathology did say that I had cancer, and they were able to stage it, and like you said in the beginning, they did stage it high because of, you know, lymph nodes and everything. So, I mean, it was in the progressed stages. They said, you know, oh, you had to have radiation, you know, there is no way to get rid of the, you know, remnants of the tissue without it. So they scheduled a bed and, you know, date for radiation, and I said, not gonna do it. And so I called up, I canceled my bed at the hospital, and my surgeon said, Melyssa, what are you doing? He said, nobody beats, you know, thyroid cancer without finishing it with radiation. And I said, well, yeah, I'm gonna use food, and, you know, we'll see how it is. And he's like, that's not gonna work. And I said, well, you know, and at this time I was working with another natural doctor, and you know, he was also monitoring, you know, blood and everything as well. And I told him, I said, no, I'm not, you know, definitely not doing the radiation. And so, you know, literally I had surgery in August of 2013. In October, I had a blood draw, and I told him, because I saw my regular endocrinologist and then saw him the following week, and my regular endocrinologist was just belittling me. I literally left her office crying because, you know, she told me, she said, Melyssa, I have 4 other patients in here who are literally on their last leg. And she said, who had thyroid cancer, the same exact kind as I had. And she said, if you don't do the radiation, she said, you are going to die just like they are. And I said, well, are they doing the radiation? Yes, this is like their 3rd round. And I thought, ooh, well, you know, and I thought, God, this is not convincing me.
Yeah, it ain't working.
No. So I told my natural doctor, I said, she is just, you know, badgering me, pushing me in a corner, saying I have to do the radiation. And he said, okay, I'll tell you what. He said, let's do a blood draw, let's do your tumor markers, let's see where you stand. And I said, fair enough. And he said, that's going to be, you know, a huge indicator as to whether or not you made the right choice. And I said, fair enough. And so we did. And never forget the morning. He called me on September 23rd, about 9 o'clock in the morning. And as any cancer patient knows, the earlier you get a phone call, the worse the news is. So I was praying. I was like, please let him call during normal business hours, and that'll be a better sign. So sure enough, 9 o'clock, they were open. He calls me, and I said, okay, what's the news? And he was kind of quiet. I said, good or bad? And he said, I haven't really seen anything like this before. And I thought, oh Lord, it's like, gone somewhere. I'm like, oh my
freaky alien cancer.
Yes, I have like something like, unidentifiable.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, Melyssa, he said, your tumor markers are in the negative. He said they're not even on the chart. And I'm like, what? And he said it again, and he said, there's nothing in you. And he said, I've never seen this before in my practice. He said, and I've seen a lot, had a lot of patients. I've been doing this a really long time. He said, in that short amount of time, I've never seen anyone clean themselves that quickly. And so I was of course over the moon. And he told me, he said, before we, throw a party, he said, I want to do more blood, because he said, I want my partner at the practice to, we want, I want some more evidence here. He said, this is incredible. And so he sent me for more, more blood work, and, did an ultrasound, and an ultrasound would pick up any, remnants or any tissue, anything that would light up. Ultrasound showed absolutely nothing. Didn't pick up a thing of tissue. Blood work, again, every single thing came back 0. And of course, I am like, I want to just jump off a roof. I'm so excited. I want to, celebrate. I want to, I'm expecting people to throw me parties, and absolutely nothing.
Nobody cares.
No, nobody. I know. And it's like, it was.
I'll throw you a party.
Aw, thanks. And it was to accomplish such a huge thing, over that span of time, and like all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, I was not celebrated once.
Yeah.
And it was so like the happiest day of my life turned into like almost the most depressing day of my life. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, I did all this work, and like no one is acknowledging.
Cares.
Yeah.
Well, once this video gets on YouTube, you'll get lots of people celebrating.
I hope so. Yeah, like giving me like air high fives.
Likes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Melyssa, thank you so much for doing this. Hey, everybody, subscribe to my channel, and make sure you share this. I mean, this is an awesome story, and Melyssa is not unique. People are healing cancer. It is very doable. It's very possible, and I just love the fact that she had just sort of that watch me do it attitude,
And I did it.
And she did. I mean, defied her doctors. She did what she wanted to do, and that's the message that I probably repeat the most, is don't do anything you don't want to do, no matter who wants you to do it. And so, Melyssa did it, I did it, and lots of other people have too. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
See ya.